Hello, and welcome to the third module of our course. In this module, we're going to talk about what is a foundation. In our last module, we talked about what is a trust. Actually, this module is going to be relatively short because a trust and a foundation, they are different things, but at their heart, they are very, very similar. Another way of thinking about it, or a way I like to explain it, is that a trust and a foundation are basically the same animal, but they're the same animal with different skin or different fur. In my picture I have a zebra, or if you're American, zebra if you like, and a horse. Actually, if you look to the notation, you will see that this image was made by AI, because it seems to be impossible to find an actual real image of a zebra and a horse standing together. But they are the same thing, but there are some differences. Those differences can be important, but I think they're not really that important in terms of what is a trust, what is a foundation, what do you use them for, how do they work. So here we are with the graphic that we pretty much finished our last module with, which shows us what is a trust, how does a trust work, what does it look like, who are the parties that are involved in the trust. And very quickly to recap, we have the grantor, founder or settlor, the person who creates the trust. We have the trustees who look after the assets in the trust. And we have the beneficiaries, who are the people who one day will benefit from the assets that are in the trust. And sometimes, not always, but quite often we have a protector or supervisor or enforcer whose job it is to make sure that everybody follows the rules that have been set originally by the founder. Okay, so now we're going to look at a foundation, and we're going to start from here and look at the differences. So the first difference really is not that important, and it's a question of vocabulary. And the difference is that the founder or grantor or settlor is now always called the founder. And that's logical, in fact, because it is a foundation, so it has to be founded by somebody. But it is the same person. It's the person who creates the structure and sets the rules. Second difference is a little bit more important, and that is that the trustees are no longer called trustees. They are called the Foundation Council. That difference has a little bit more significance because they are now acting something more like a board of directors would act in a company. And the third difference is the most important difference, and that is the fact that with our trust, if you remember, we have this cloud. And the cloud indicates that a trust is an entity, but an entity that does not have legal personality. It operates only through the trustees. A foundation is different. The cloud is gone because a foundation is a legal entity. It's something like a company. It has legal personality, so it can sign a contract. It can act in its own name. And that's interesting. It's interesting, first of all, because we ask the question, who is the owner? Now, with a trust, we can say that the ownership was somehow split between the trustees who had the legal ownership. They were the owners on the land register or the company's register, and the beneficiaries who have the beneficial ownership. They're the ones who will one day get the benefit of the assets that are in the trust. And together they somehow, let's say, share the ownership. But in the case of the foundation, those concepts don't apply anymore. In fact, it is the foundation itself which is the owner of the assets that are in the trust. What difference does that make? Not much in practice, but it's interesting to know. Why would you choose a foundation over a trust, or why would you choose a trust over a foundation? The answer is it probably got a lot to do with where in the world you live. Some legal systems, especially the legal systems of the, let's say, former British Empire or British Commonwealth, they like trusts. They understand trusts. Trusts are normal for them. That's the way things work. In contrast, the countries, for example, of continental Europe, are much more, or we can say also civil law countries, are much less familiar with the concept of a trust. And a trust can actually be sometimes somehow a little bit confusing or frightening for the lawyers or for society in those countries. So they much prefer the idea of a foundation. And again, in those countries, especially in Europe, if you have a foundation, because a foundation is a legal entity, then it's very easy for the banks to understand it, what it is. Trusts are more challenging for the banks, and so it's quite easy, or much easier, to open a bank account in Europe for a foundation than it is for a trust. There's also one other interesting consequence, and that is in terms of what is the duty or responsibility of the Foundation Council. So remember before, in the last module, we talked about the trustees having duties to act in the best interests of the beneficiaries, to give effect to the purpose of the trusts, and to make sure that everything runs properly. The Foundation Council members have basically the same duties, but there's a slight legal difference in that the duties of the trustees are duties that are owed towards the beneficiaries. The duties of the Foundation Council are duties that are owed, like a board of directors of a company, the duties are owed towards the foundation itself. It's a technical difference, but it's quite interesting sometimes when you look at how these things work. And to wrap up this section, I told you it would be quite short, just a couple of other typical differences. I say typical because in different jurisdictions around the world, in different countries around the world, there are different rules. But typically when you look at a foundation, you will see that the law and sometimes the structure of the foundation itself is more complicated, more complex than a trust. And the reason for that is that foundations are typically created based on written law, on the law about foundations, which is found in the statute books of the particular country's legal systems, whereas trusts are much more often created based on traditions and customs and not so much on written law. So it means that the rules for foundations can, in some cases, be more complex. But that's a very big generalization. For example, in the Czech Republic, where I live, the rules for foundations are actually much less complex than for trusts. So, as I say, general comment. The second difference is privacy. Foundations are like companies. That means that they are registered on some kind of electronic system, normally something like Companies House, that is maintained by the state, so that people can look up the company and find out what it is, and they can look up also a foundation on the same basis and find out what it is, and to some extent the people who are involved in the foundation. So if you're looking for privacy, a foundation may not be the best choice. Trusts more typically do not have registers, and more typically there is a higher level of privacy and confidentiality. But again, that's a generalization, because again, for example, in the Czech Republic, in fact it's the other way around, and you would get a higher level of privacy from a foundation than from a trust. But these things are detail, these things are not important. I think what I'm trying to emphasize today is that essentially a trust and a foundation, in terms of what you and what your family wants from them, what you want to achieve as a tool for achieving your goals, they are essentially the same thing. And the differences really don't matter that much. They matter to lawyers, but they don't matter that much, or they shouldn't matter that much to you. So that's all. That's the difference between trusts and foundations. In the next module, we're going to go and look at different kinds of trusts, but in that module, and pretty much like everything else in this course, when I talk about trusts, you can substitute foundation for that word and you will get the same result. So, thank you very much for the time, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you found that useful and helpful. If you'd like to see more of this, please like the video and please subscribe using the button that you can see just there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and thanks again for watching.